Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ekwaba Marachi Gold, and I will be taking the tutorial for Rehabilitation Psychology Sci 434. And today we'll be discussing disability and the adaptation model. So, what is adaptation? Adaptation refers to a process by which an individual adjusts to a new environment or to new situations. Now, in disability, there are changes. For example, if someone wasn't visually impaired before and they encountered an accident which led to visual impairment, that is a change and they need to cope with this change. So what adaptation is trying to say is that there is a process by which an individual takes on new behaviors to cope with these changes that come with disability. And there are three models that we can use to explain this. There is the somatopsychology model, there is the ecological model, and there is the stages model. Now, in the somatopsychology model, that model has its roots in Kurt Lewin's field theory of 1935 to 1936. And what does this field theory say? This field theory basically says your behavior is as a result or as a function rather of a person and his environment. So the interaction between you and your environment is what leads to your behavior. Kurt Lewin is also the father of psychology, of social psychology, and in this theory, we can use his theory to explain somatopsychology in the sense that somatopsychology refers to the influence that chronic illnesses and disability (CID) has on the psychological aspect of an individual. So just like he says that a person is a function of their a behavior rather is a function of a person and the environment. We're also trying to say that the behavior of a person is a function of how they are interacting with these new situations, with these new changes that has come upon them because of chronic illness, because of a chronic illness or a disability. Now, Beatrice Wright, she worked upon this theory to develop the theory of disability acceptance. She didn't talk about adjustment, she didn't talk about adopting, but rather acceptance. And what does this mean? It means that an individual is accepting the disability and chronic illness into their self concept. So they are understanding that it is a part of their self identity, they are understanding that it is part of their perception of themselves, and instead of making um trying to deny the existence of this, they are more in tune with the fact that they have faced this situation and they are trying to work on ways by which they can overcome the challenges brought about by this situation. And she developed two frameworks for this year. She said there is the coping and there is succumbing. Now, what is coping? When individuals cope with their disability, instead of them to be faced with the problems of their disability and let it weigh them down or be so focused on the negative aspect of their disability, they have decided that they will do something called a value restructuring, which is where they are going to integrate new ways of accepting this disability. They are integrating new ways of overcoming the challenges of this disability. So they are seeing themselves in, oh, how can I overcome this? Oh, okay, I cannot do this anymore. But what are the things I can do? How do I engage in activities that I used to love to do before? But I am not able to do exactly the way I used to do before because of my new presenting situation or because I am now a person with disability. While individuals that succumb are individuals that are in denial or they are so drawn back by the negative aspect of their disability. They are so, the disability has weighed them down. They are not able to engage with the way they used to engage. They are not able to do things anymore. They are just overcome by the challenges that they have faced due to this disability. And then we're going to understand that self-concept and body image plays a huge role in how an individual faces this disability. So when an individual becomes a person with disability or when an individual finally acknowledges that they are a person with disability, it can have a negative effect on their self-concept. They can feel like they are now worthless. They can feel like they are now unable to be the person that they wanted to be or the self ideal that they had in their mind. They are unable to reach that situation or they are unable to reach that person that they wanted to be, and that can greatly affect their mental well-being, that can greatly affect their psychological well-being, that can greatly affect how they feel about themselves. It can affect their body image. Maybe they are no longer happy about how they look because of their disability. They are no longer excited about how they look because of their disability. So successful integration of the changes caused by CID into an individual's self identity leads to successful adaptation. So, if you have successfully integrated the effect of your chronic illness or disability on you, and you are now working on ways by which you can overcome these challenges or face these challenges head on, that means you are successfully adapting to your disability or chronic illness. The second theory is the stages model. Now, the stages model of adaptation explains that there is a linear stage by which people that are faced with chronic illness and disabilities adapt. So this was done by Levinch in 1986, and he did a literature review. He reviewed 40 literatures. It was a very extensive review rather. And after this review, he was able to come up with 5 good stages which explain how people adapt to their disability or how people cope with their disability. So the first stage is the initial impact. So what does the initial impact say? The impact is the first reaction that an individual has to their disability. So maybe they have just experienced this disability, or they have just come to terms with this disability, or they've just heard the news that they are now disabled. They may experience 2 stages. The first stage is shock. So when an individual is in shock, they don't believe, they are in disbelief, they have an experience of numbness, they are just wowed by the fact that they are unable to do things that they could do before, or they are unable to present themselves in the ways that they were able to present themselves before. And another stage is anxiety. Anxiety can be referred to a panic stricken reaction to the significance, the magnificence rather, of CID. So when an individual realizes that, oh, maybe I am not going to be able to walk ever, or I am not going to be able to see ever, or they are like, I have this disease that is so life threatening. So they have realized that this is a big deal. This is something that has actually affected how I am right now or how I used to be. When they realize that significance of the CID, they might be in a state of anxiety. They might be worried that what are they going to do? How are they going to be able to present themselves after this? They will be fearful about how they'll be able to function and how they'll be able to live because of their disability. Then there is defense mobilization. So what does defense mobilization mean? Defense mobilization refers to the state where which an individual is trying to defend themselves against the emotional impact of disability. So in defense mobilization, there are 2 stages. There is bargaining and there is denial. So in the bargaining stage, the individual is trying to, let me use the word, expectations of recovery through restitution agreements and protest. So they are like, ah, God, if I did not do this, I would not have experienced it. Maybe they were in an accident and they were going somewhere. They might be arguing with themselves that if I did not go out to this place, I would not have faced this. Or if I did not go to this party, or if I did not go on this walk, or if I did not go to eat at this restaurant, or if I did not go to see my friend, or if I did not go to work today, if I did not go to school today, they might have this bargaining that why did I even do this? Why did I even do that? But it is always useful to remember that it's never really a good thing to be in that stage of bargaining. So it is them trying to protest against this situation. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? No, it cannot be. I cannot be this. I cannot be that. This is not. They are trying to bargain. There is also the stage of denial. The stage of denial is the expectation of recovery, but it involves no process of bargaining, no process of making a proposal. So basically, in that stage of denial, they are just in disbelief. They do not believe that they are experiencing this. They are in denial. They are minimizing the symptoms or truly ignoring its existence. So if they are feeling any form of pain due to their chronic illness, they are minimizing the significance of that pain, or they are ignoring the fact that that pain even exists, even though it does well exist. The third stage is the initial realization. So that comes by understanding the impact of this chronic illness and disability. And during that stage, there's a stage of emotional turmoil because they are no longer bargaining, they are no longer um in denial, but they've now come to realize that, oh, I have actually faced this thing. And it can lead to feelings of sadness, it can lead to feelings of mourning. Maybe they are grieving the what they have lost. So if they have lost function, they are grieving the fact that, oh, they have lost function. If they have lost the ability to participate in social events like they would love to, then they're grieving the fact that I can no longer participate in social events. You know, it can come from things like maybe being in the hospital bed, and now you're because you are now in the hospital bed, you can't go out to see your friends, and you're grieving the fact that, oh, today is 6 p.m. Maybe every 6 p.m. on a Tuesday you used to go to church or you used to go and play, and you're now grieving the fact that you are unable to go to church and you are unable to go and play by 6 p.m. today because you are faced with this chronic illness and disability. There is also the stage of depression. Depression is noticed a lot of times when people face chronic illness and disability. And then there is the stage of internalized anger, and that is described as the manifestation of self-directed sentiments associated with feelings of regret. So they are battling in between themselves, they are going up and down, asking themselves, they shouldn't have engaged in this, or they shouldn't have engaged in that, and they are just fighting themselves. So the next stage is retaliation and rebellion. So during retaliation and rebellion stage, there is hostility, there is bitterness towards any person, object, activity, or environment that is associated with chronic illness and disability. So anytime they see something or they hear something that, is related to their disability, it evokes feelings of bitterness, feelings of hostility. They might refuse to participate in things that they would have participated in before. They might refuse to go for treatment. There might be no motivation for them. Those kind of things happen during the stage of retaliation and rebellion. Then the last stage is their stage of reintegration. Reintegration involves acceptance of this disability. So you are now accepting that, oh, I have come to this stage, and I need to work on how I can better face the challenges that are associated with this stage, and how I can overcome those that um are pulling me down. How I can function at my optimal capacity despite being disabled, despite having a chronic illness. So the next one we're going to talk about is the ecological model. Now, the ecological model was developed by Levinch, the same guy that did the same person rather that did the stages model, but this time he worked along with Antonak, Levinch and Antonak, 1997. And these both of them, they came along to describe four variables that are useful in understanding an individual's adjustment or adaptation to disability and chronic illness. So there are four variables. The three of these variables are interpersonal, and one of them is external. So the first variable is there are variables that are associated with the chronic illness and disability. That's variables such as time of disability, time of onset of disability, age that they realize the disability, severity of the disability, um, type of disability, things like that affect how an individual copes or adapts to the disability. Then there is also the variables associated with social demographics. Those are things like age, gender, socioeconomic status, educational level, those things, race, ethnicity, those things affect how an individual copes with disability. And there is also the third stage, which is variables that are associated with your personality, such as your self-efficacy, your self-perception, your body image, your personal values, and and beliefs, and your perceived control of this disability. Then the external factor is the variable associated with physical and social environment. In the video where we talked about social psychology being a model of rehabilitation, involved in associated rather with rehabilitation psychology, we discussed how social environments can greatly affect people with disability. So we discussed stigmatization, dehumanization. All those things can affect how an individual with disability copes. It can affect how an individual with disability adapts to their disability. So if they're in a place where culturally it is, seen as a taboo to be a person with disability, and they feel like everybody around them is seemingly against them. It can affect how they cope. It can affect how they are addressing their disability. There is also another ecological model, which is by Bishop 2005, and this model is called the disability centrality model. And this model is gotten from the Davis illness intrusive approach. And there are four components that affect this model. The first one is satisfaction. So, how satisfied is an individual? How content are they with different aspects of their life? How content are they with their quality of life? Then the next one is perceived control. That is, how do they, what is their perception about how much they can manage or handle this disability? An individual that feels like they have more control over the effect or the challenges of their disability will be able to adapt better than an individual that feels like they don't have control. In fact, if an individual feels like they do not have control of their disability or the effects or challenges that come with their disability, they might not be motivated to go for treatment because they're like, whatever I do, I will still not be able to control the effect this disability has on me. They might not be able to control their treatments. They might not be able to control. They might not be motivated rather to go along with their treatment. They might not be motivated to go for therapy. They might not be motivated to go and see their rehabilitation psychologist because they feel like at the end of the day they don't have control over this disability and the effects that it has on them. Another component is the impact of CID and its treatment. You know, some people are um impacted greatly by their most people rather are impacted greatly by their chronic illness and disability, and even the treatment. You know, for people that have cancer and go through chemotherapy, there is an impact of that treatment. There are things like falling, loss of hair that happens with the treatment. There are certain foods that they can't take. So, you know, those things affect how an individual adapts to their disability and chronic illness. There's also the impact, which is the last component, the impact of all these factors on an individual. So when all the factors have a great impact on all areas of an individual's life, this can greatly affect how an individual adapts. So now we're going to be looking at the adaptation process and the adaptation process in general and how it would affect someone if the person is a father or a parent to a child that has been disabled or a child that has just experienced disability, how will they be able to adapt? The first thing that they will experience is shock. This is the first stage in the adaptation process. Now, we explained shock before. There is numbness, there is a feeling of what is happening. You know, during that time, it is even said that maybe it can lead to like arguments between, assuming it's a doctor that just informed them of their parent of their child's disability, of their loved one's disability. It can lead to an argument. They can file for, you know, a case saying that you may be the cause of my child's disability if the child went through some surgery or some surgery that they feel like could have led to the disability. You know, that stage of shock occurs. Then there's the stage of denial. That's disbelief. We discuss denial as expected recovery but without any proposal. So the person just feels like I am not this. They are minimizing the symptoms, or they are ignoring the fact that they have actually faced or they have actually come in contact with something that is this life changing. There's also the stage of anger. Anger involves hostility. They might not want to interact with anybody. They might not want to talk to anybody. They might be bitter towards people that come to try to come in contact with them because they feel like I have gone through something so heart wrenching. Anybody that tries to like bring up a topic of this topic of my disability, or anybody that tries to help me around it, it makes me feel like I am not the person that I was. It might be like damaging to their self concept, which is why we discussed about acceptance and integrating your disability into your self concept. They might feel like it is damaging to their self concept, and that can lead to feelings of anger, feelings of hostility, feelings of bitterness. Then there's also sadness. You know, sadness involves grieving the loss that is associated with CID. I talked about loss of function. So maybe an individual is unable to do the things that they loved before. They are unable to go the places that they loved before. Or maybe they can still do those things, but they need help. They need like consistent help to do those things. It might make them feel unhappy. It might make them feel sad. It might make them feel like I have just lost something that is of great importance to me, or something that keeps me happy, or something that just keeps me in the loop, to say, like something that just engages me. I've lost the ability to do that thing, and now I have feelings of sadness. Now I am grieving. Now I am mourning. The next stage, which is such an important stage, is the feeling of detachment. Detachment involves a reluctant accept of reality. A reluctant acceptance rather of reality. One thing we need to know is that self-realism and actually coming into terms with the fact that you have experienced this chronic illness and disability is very important. It is extremely important in, you know, adjustment, acceptance, and adaptation to disabilities and chronic illness. So during detachment, an individual has reached that first stage of self-realism where they are now reluctantly accepting the fact that I have gotten this situation, or I am now this, or I have now experienced this, or this is what's going on in my life right now. This is where I am at right now. They are slowly accepting or coming to terms with that fact. There is also the stage of reorganization. So reorganization involves realism. There are different aspects of your life which disability affects. So you try to like reorganize those areas. I talked about value restructuring. You're trying to restructure certain areas of your life to fit into um adapting to these um challenges that have come with disabilities. So certain things need to be changed. It can be physically, it can be emotionally. There are certain restructurings that need to occur when the onset of disability happens, or when a person has now come to terms with the fact that they are disabled. There are certain things that need to be changed. There are certain things that need to be worked on so that they can better adapt and function at their optimal capacity. The last stage is the acceptance stage. Acceptance stage is when they have accepted, or they have um, put this the aspect of their disability into their self-concept. They have integrated it into their self-concept, and they are better working on how they can move on, or adapt, or find ways to cope with the challenges and the issues and the effects of this disability. Thank you very much.